Well, hello. How are you all? You know it's me. It's Pastor Garlinda Price. And hopefully prayerfully I should say, this will be a short video. Yes, I know Marvin is not here and many of you will be looking for him. However, tonight's video does not include Marvin. Just kidding. But I'm Garlinda Price and I'm a pastor with Common Ground Ministry along with my husband, Pastor Marvin Price. So shout out to him. How are you this week? I hope y'all are having a great week. And thank you for all the positive feedback that you all shared with us from the last video that we did last week together. We have fun doing those, and probably some people would think, do they ever argue? I assure you that we do. There are times when we get on each other's nerves, but for the most part, after 25 years, right, you laugh that stuff off. That's nothing that you go to sleep mad about or that you harp on or stay on. So we might be mad for a good 30 minutes to an hour and then we get over it. So that's usually us together, which can be annoying for some people, right? Because we can get on people's nerves just laughing and cutting up. But anyway, he's my best friend. So I wanted to say hello to him. And so we're going to start tonight. So in my prayer time, on Wednesday, no, this is for Wednesday today. I don't have the date. Let me see what date it was. But anyway, during my prayer time on July 18th, God gave me just something he wanted me to share with you, and I thought it was really interesting. I thought it was really awesome, and I loved it. And so I had to make myself a note. So I just want to encourage you. One, I want to thank again those that came out to the Launch It 30 Days to Greatness Success class this past weekend. And I want to personally invite all of the women, all of the young women, the young ladies, the older women, the older ladies, it doesn't matter to us. On September 10th, we are having the Fivefold Gathering of Women. And when God called me to do a women's conference, I was like, no, I don't want any parts to that. And I kind of pushed it off, but I don't get to dictate that to God, right? But what I was saying I didn't want was a traditional women's conference, which is why I put off having one. So when God told me this isn't a women's conference, this is a gathering of women, and he put it around the fivefold, it's so amazing the way it's going to be orchestrated and the way it's going to come together. And so it's a small expense of investing in yourself just to come in here and see what God is doing. So the amazing women that are going to be on the panel are Dr. Patrice Carter. You all can find her here on Facebook. Prophetess Rashida Potts, Minister Tisha Caldwell, Minister Latria Weish, and myself, yours truly, Pastor Garlinda Price. You will not be disappointed. So we just want to invite you to come out and to please share our post on your page, because God is calling us for this gathering. We're expecting and believing God for 100 women. That's the number that he's purposed in our heart to reach. And we know that he is going to show up and show out because this is his conference, right? So as you see us sharing the posts and the videos, we're also going to be mailing out letters. So if you would like your church to receive a letter, just let us know and we will get one sent with a personal hand-signed, handwritten invitation to the women of your congregation. And we look forward to seeing you. So let's get started on the video where God would have us to go. So we're going to be coming from Psalm 78, verse 70 through verse 72, and I'm going to post that down below because I know there are some word scholars that like to hold me accountable when I say I'm going to put something down below and I forget, right? So I will not forget prayerfully. So he chose David his servant and took him from the sheep pens. From tending the sheep he brought him to be the shepherd of his people Jacob. Speaking of God, talking about David. So to be the shepherd of his people Jacob, of Israel his inheritance. And David shepherded them with integrity of heart, with skillful hands he led them. And so why was that important, right? So it was just some notes that God gave me for you and for us, those that are in ministry, that are Christians, not just in ministry, but Christians and believers. He made such an amazing point. I'm going to share it with you. So I want to read you some notes of what my Bible stated down, like in the subtext in the bottom. It said, although David had been on the throne when this psalm was written, he is called a shepherd and not a king. Shepherding, a common profession in biblical terms, was a highly responsible job. The flocks were completely dependent upon shepherds for guidance, provision, and protection. So David had spent his early years as a shepherd. This was a training ground for the future responsibilities God had in store for him. When he was ready, God took him from caring for sheep to caring for Israel, God's people. So don't treat your present situation lightly or irresponsibly. It may be God's training ground for your future. I thought that was so powerful, right? So I want to say it one more time. Don't treat your present situation lightly or irresponsibly. It may be God's training ground for your future. So he never knew when he was out there tending sheep, tending sheep, that he was going to be the king of Israel, right? He just knew that that's what his family did. They were sheep herders. And then when I don't want to get it wrong, when Samuel came and had to anoint him as one of Jesse's sons, and he was going through the sons, and then he said, well, do you have another one? And they called David in, and then they anointed him king. They found him working in the field. So when he came in and he was all ruddy and dirty, and I'm sure he didn't smell great, and he showed up, and they said, well, certainly it's not him. And God was like, that's the one that I want, right? So God is going to come by, and he's going to find you ruddy, he's going to find you dirty, and he's going to find you working. And that's when someone is going to say, the Spirit of the Lord is going to tell that person, that's the one I want. But God has to find you first being faithful over the shepherding of what he called you to do. So if you can be faithful over the lambs, right? If you can be faithful over the job that he's called you to do, whether it's not that glamorous, whether it doesn't look that great, whether it doesn't look that good, it doesn't feel that good, and it doesn't seem good. He had the heart of a king, and he was called to be a king even while he was yet a shepherd. So what is it that God has called you to do? What is it that you're currently working in, right? Are you doing it with excellence? Are you doing it as unto the Lord? Because this is your training ground. So when I was teaching the class on Saturday, I shared with them why God had given me the title of Launch It, because initially it was just 30 Days to Greatness, but then he wanted me to add Launch It, 30 Days to Greatness. And so I'm not going to give it away. You'll have to come to one of my classes to find out, or read the book when it comes out. But one thing that God wanted me to share during the class from the scripture, that when God called the first disciples, one, he found them working. There was not one that he didn't find working when he called the 12. They were all doing something when he came by and when he called them to service. And then before he put them in place or position to be a disciple, they were in some form of service first. So for example, when Peter was at the Lake of Gennesaret, God asked him, hey, take me a little ways out from the shore so he could preach to the people. So he came by, he found Peter washing his nets, and they were bringing in the boats. And then he asked him, can you take me out? So he asked Peter to serve. And then after he served, he told Peter to go out and to cast his nets again. And then, of course, the boats were about to break, and the nets were about to break. The boats were about to sink, and the nets were about to break. And so they were obedient. So he found them working. He asked them to serve. They followed him through obedience, and then they stopped doing everything to go and follow him, and they became his leaders. He became the rock of the church. And so God must find us working. He must find us serving. He must find us being obedient, and then we have to follow after him no matter what the cost is, right? And so where you are currently is your training ground. It's your shepherding. It's where you have to be faithful over. And it says in another text of scripture that I read, that David would take the younger sheep out first. He would let the little lambs out first so they could eat on the tender grass, and he would hold back the larger sheep so that the smaller lambs could eat first. Are we as cautious and careful with people that are in our lives? Do we let those that don't know as much as we know, do we let them do we treat them with care? Do we nurture their relationship with Christ? Or do we treat everybody with judgment and condemnation like they should know as much as we know? Because there's always going to be somebody that knows more. That's one thing my father-in-law taught Marvin, and that he said there's always somebody bigger, better, faster, stronger, right? So however we treat the least in the kingdom, and however we treat the least of what God has called us to do, is what we're going to do with the greatest, right? Because what is in our heart is a truth teller through our actions and through our words. So I want to say it to you one more time before we end the video. Don't treat your present situation lightly or irresponsibly. It may be God's training ground for your future. Okay, so if you didn't know he was coming back today, and he came back today and he found you in your present situation, and he came to get you and to anoint you king, what would he find you doing? And would he find you doing it with excellence? Just a question. I love you, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Mwah. Bye.